Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, saluting Earth Day on April 22nd with an ongoing commitment to help offset carbon emissions with sustainable harvesting of Missouri forests. Details at choosewood.com.
From St. Louis Public Radio. This is St. Louis on the Air.
I'm Elaine Cha.
I think living as a trans person, a marginalized and impacted individual, it can really skew expectations of what is possible. And I want to know why. What can we do for these people? What is our shared community vision?
Now, before we begin our conversation, it is important to recognize that yesterday, Missouri death row inmate Amber McLaughlin became the first openly transgender person executed in the United States, and that her death by lethal injection was the country's first execution of 2023. We want to acknowledge this up front. Yes, Amber murdered someone, and it's also true that the state of Missouri took a life as well. The nonprofit organization Metro Trans Umbrella Group, or MTUG, will celebrate its 10-year anniversary this year. In the decade since its founding, MTUG has served as a vital resource and community hub for St. Louis area transgender residents. We'll talk about this later in the show, as MTUG also supports those who are trans and in prison. Joining me in studio to talk about the Metro Trans Umbrella Group's continuing and new priorities for supporting transgender folks in the St. Louis region is Michaela Joy Kraemer, Interim Executive Director of MTUG. Michaela, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much.
Let's begin with MTUG and what it is. What is Metro Trans Umbrella Group?
So, Metro Trans Umbrella Group, MTUG, we are a nonprofit based in St. Louis, operating in South St. Louis and Benton Park West. We're really here to advocate, create power, and create community for transgender people. This is something that means a lot to me as someone who grew up in St. Louis and trans, to learn that MTUG existed. Shortly after I came out, it's provided so much healing for me, and I think that's a big part of what we're trying to do as we go into the future.
Mm-hmm. And this is the 10-year anniversary.
Yeah.
How did MTUG come to be in 2013?
So our previous executive director and co-founder, Sayer Johnson, along with other trans masculine, trans men, started a support group called The Locker Room. And this was simply to give people of shared experience a place to connect. And through that, it grew to include more trans people, non-binary, gender non-conforming, through community support. As we grew, getting a community center building donated to us led us into a lot of direct services and helping people that are in need, not just from a large-scale advocacy point, but boots on the ground, people who are unhoused and trans or hungry. We feed people, we clothe people. We also just give people support, an ear and shared experience to confide in.
Mm-hmm. How does Metro Trans Umbrella Group's approach to trans community building and service compare with groups in other cities, for example?
I think, I can't speak much to what other cities are doing, and a lot of that has to do with my connection here to St. Louis. Mm-hmm. I think so much of what I'm bringing and other staff and board members of the organization are trying to focus on greater St. Louis, the experience as someone who grew up here, has been trans here and closeted for a long time. I think there's a lot of context specific to our local area that that we consider when we're creating these groups. We do groups in person. We do Zoom. There is community events that we have, and it's not lost on us that we are trans people living in a state that, at least so far, has not shown that they appreciate or value us. So that's a big concern when it comes to safety and the screening processes that we do for the beginning of a support group or someone entering. And some of these things can be initial friction or barriers for someone getting support, but it's also a preservation, trying to make sure that we are giving our community safe places that they can be affirmed and validated and find friends, find support.
And in what ways, speaking to the local as being the thing that you are focusing on or focused on, in terms of those groups, can you provide an example of one or two of the groups that have been created to keep pace with the different needs and asks of trans folks here in St. Louis?
Yeah, I think, the first that comes to mind is QTPOC, that was started shortly after the murder of Mike Brown.
And what does QTPOC stand for?
Queer and Trans People of Color. I'm a person of color. I'm a Filipino from here with my mother and grandparents immigrated here. And I was talking to another Filipina trans woman the other day about, one support group that we go to that is predominantly white. And as beneficial as it is for us to have that space, there are experiences that we have that are hard to relate to or hard to feel safe or comfortable confiding in others who maybe don't have that experience. And QTPOC was created for that reason. It was to give people a safe place to, really, when Mike Brown was murdered, that was just tragic. And it was a way for us to hold the community and provide some sanctuary.
And that was just a year after MTUG got its start in 2013.
Yes.
In 2014. So that the crossing of timing certainly seems to have been fortuitous.
Yeah, history keeps happening.
That is quite true. With partnerships and collaborations, this is something that, in my experience anyway, St. Louis really prides itself on. How have the partnerships and collaborations that have come about through and with MTUG, how does this demonstrate sort of how core values align with the needs and asks of queer folks here?
So the first that I was aware of when I joined Metro Trans Umbrella Group was a partnership with Planned Parenthood. The local affiliate here, we created a program called Transforming Community, Transforming Care that provided informed consent model of trans-affirming care for gender-affirming hormone treatment. There are so many gates and barriers or lack of education in healthcare providers to give competent care. Myself and many people that I know have had to educate doctors about how to take care of us. And so partnering with Planned Parenthood, we've been able to have an easy access, a smooth road for people to, get their affirming hormone treatment with financial assistance, whether transportation assistance. We do telehealth at our community center in South St. Louis, and really there's so much discomfort that can come with first starting your transition, and so we created a program that tries to hold people as they're going through that and hold their hand and support them along the way.
And it's great to hear you're talking about that, because Sarah Fensky, our former host here on St. Louis on the Air, had spoken with a representative from Planned Parenthood as well as from MTUG about that. And insofar as things that you all have been doing, you've been in this interim executive director position with Metro Trans Umbrella Group since May of 2022, and I believe you recently signed on for another year contract to continue in this interim role. In that time, what chief priorities represent a continuation of existing efforts, in addition to what you've just shared about transforming community and transforming care?
Yeah. Our mission is to bring community together. That's how I got involved with MTUG. That is how a lot of people interact with MTUG, is through community. But something that Sayer Johnson said, and I remember had written on a whiteboard at the file cabinet next to his
Sayer
desk.
Johnson is?
Sayer Johnson is the co-founder and former executive director. Mm-hmm. So we had a little overlap period there. And he had this whiteboard that was building power for trans people. And that really speaks to me. This is a huge part of what I'm looking to do over the next 1, 3, 5, 10 years, as long as they'll have me here. Mm-hmm. Power for trans people to me is autonomy, equity. It's the ability for us to be represented and be safe. I don't have the same rights here that I do if I go across the river. Mm-hmm. And to be able to partner with other organizations, foundations, volunteers, community members, to not just to advocate for our rights and try to create new programs, but listen to the community. We serve so many, thousands of trans people in St. Louis, but there are so many other trans people that we don't talk to. Mm-hmm. And I want to know why. What can we do for these people? What is our shared community vision? Because I think that's such an important part of trying to create a future where voices are represented, where people's perspectives are honored. And there's no reason, especially right now, for me to create strategic plans and move towards the future. I can come up with these things, but if I am not listening to the community, what's the point? Mm-hmm. Are we actually going to be doing things that are helping people, or are we, trying to just start something because it sounds like a good idea?
Right. And to that end of arriving at shared vision, what is something that MTUG is undertaking in the next year or two to get an understanding of that, of what vision is and what it looks like if it is shared?
Yeah. The pandemic really strained our community connection. We've had a lot of events, proms, and things in the past over the last 10 years, and the lockdown pandemic really had us move towards direct services of pantry deliveries and helping people from a distance. It seems like we are at a new stage, new era of COVID-19. We're ready to have our community events again. We are, we have multiple events planned from the beginning of the year throughout all of 2023. I don't know. I'm excited about the first few because, for example, in January, on the 28th, we will be having a name change clinic and brunch, because we've done mutual aid, micro grants for people to get their names changed, help them with the paperwork. But I think it's important for us to create more of a space where we're not simply, sharing space and proximity, but we're engaging with each other. Mm-hmm. So, this event will be connecting people, not just together, but learning from them too. What are, you're getting this this document notarized, and you're getting to eat, but talk to us. What's going on? What kind of things in your life are challenges? And so many people that I've talked to who come to the community center or call over the phone, I think living as a trans person, a marginalized and impacted individual, it can really skew expectations of what is possible or what kind of challenges that you may be going through that just feel normal.
And I think that's a great place to take a very brief break and to return to this idea of names and who you are, especially as we're going into the new year. We'll be back shortly to continue this conversation. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio. Now back to our conversation with Michaela Joy Kraemer of Metro Trans Umbrella Group. Before the break, we were talking about names, identity, taking on who you are, and understanding who you are sort of in the context of a larger community. And from what I understand, one of the things that you all will be doing with Metro Trans Umbrella Group is a localized needs assessment that is toward sort of building community. Why is that necessary?
I think you said it, toward. Like, we need to know what people are experiencing now and what they want to move toward. We talked about the local importance to learning what best ways we can serve people. The National Center for Trans Equality does a large survey, just wrapped one up recently. While those are extremely needed and helpful, they make such a huge impact on being aware of the trans experience. To be able to do something in this region for greater St. Louis, I think this is where we can identify some of what is different here than in other places. Learning directly from people who've experienced. I mean, it's no secret we have a really segregated city, and that makes a huge impact on resources and what networks people have, how people can get help. I think that's something that I really struggle with our organization, is how many people don't know that we have this support. I've been in St. Louis my whole life. MTUG has been here for 10 years, and I learned about MTUG in 2020 for the first time.
And how did that happen?
I came out as trans.
Okay.
I came out a year before that, and having a therapist encouraged me to find community. It's scary to be a newly out person and knowing where to go. I didn't knowingly meet any other trans people until I went to MTUG and went to FemSpec, our trans femme and trans woman support group. And that was intimidating to say, because it felt like I was entering a room full of these women, and I didn't know if I belonged. I think that's what is so important about letting people know that we exist and letting people know that we have value and a need for other people. I think we as people need others, and it can be scary to be alone or isolated, and we can certainly help with that.
Mm-hmm. And what makes this timely? Why is this something that needs to be done now, this needs assessment?
Being in Missouri is a big challenge as a trans person. The last year was really disheartening. seeing what in Jefferson City, what's being proposed, what's being talked about and argued about. I hope that the future looks better for pro-LGBTQ legislation and rights, but when our community is under attack, I think this is when we really need to activate and be there. I think that's why this right now is important. I thought 2021 was going to be the worst year for LGBTQ rights. I'm hoping 2023 makes an improvement from this past year.
Mm-hmm. And at the top of this segment, acknowledgement that Amber McLaughlin was executed by the state of Missouri. That happened just yesterday evening. And Amber McLaughlin was sentenced to capital punishment by a judge for the rape and murder of Beverly Gunther. Amber is someone who transitioned while she was incarcerated. And you came to know Amber in the latter days of her life on death row. How did that connection, how did that come about?
So there's an organization, MADP, Missourians for Alternatives to the Death Penalty. One of their board members and Missourian, Kendall Martinez-Wright, reached out to our organization, cold called us, just rang our community center phone. And in talking to her, learning about Amber, this is shortly after her execution date was scheduled. And I think it was a surprise to their organization, having known Amber for years. And Kendall was asking for support for Amber, looking for spiritual advisors or community members, people that she could talk to. She's sorry, it's still, last night is still tough, to change, to say, Amber was in a men's prison. And the lack of community and people to be able to talk to, confide in, just as talking about these support groups, she didn't have that ability. So in connecting with her, sending her messages, talking to her on the phone, visiting her, I know it was as healing for me as it was for her to be able to meet someone with shared experience. And, I think we all have the experience of meeting someone you just kind of click with. And I think that's one of the benefits of having a unique trans experience. Mm-hmm. So I got really close to Amber over the past few months, and yesterday was challenging, to put it lightly.
Well, and today too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Jessica Hicklin knows what it's like to transition as an inmate. Sentenced to life in prison for a murder she committed at 16, Jessica served 26 years before her release last year. And in 2018, she won a landmark transgender rights case against the Missouri Department of Corrections, allowing her and other trans inmates, like Amber, to access hormone therapy. Last month, she told St. Louis on the Air about existing as a trans person in prison.
It's very, I don't even know how to begin to explain what it's like to be the only woman in a room full of 1,000 men and living there, and vice versa. There are trans men in the women's prisons, and to be able to navigate both at the same time is a constant stress. It's depressing, it's frightening, and for many trans folks, just like folks in the free world, every day is very uncertain. Mm-hmm. You don't know. Are you going to face violence from the person you live with, or are you going to face violence from the person who's supposed to protect you? And that is a reality in and out of prison, and it's a reality in prison as well.
And that was Jessica Hicklin speaking about the realities of what trans people deal with when they are incarcerated, whether that is in a men's prison or in a women's prison. Michaela, do Jessica's insights reflect some of the principal whys behind Metro Trans umbrella group's plans to support incarcerated trans people in our region moving forward?
100%. I think one of the reasons that even being contacted about Amber was such a of course decision to me was because I became friends with Jessica shortly after she was released, and just talking to her about the experiences of being trans, but the limitations or constraints or terror of being an incarcerated trans person, it put a lot of things into perspective for me. It was really sobering at how privileged it can be to have the hardship of being free than being in prison. So going forward, this is a no-brainer for me. Like, if our organization, if MTUG's mission is to bring community together, we need to serve the most impacted people who need it the most. Incarcerated individuals that are trans, unless we're calling them, unless we're reaching out, I think they are invisible to the large population of people. I don't think people know that they need support. And, that's something that has been really rewarding within our organization, and talking to other trans people, introducing Amber to other trans people. That was not just, Amber was so grateful to meet so many people in just a short amount of time, but I know that connection meant so much to the people out here, the trans people, that I think I think the relation to her really spoke to a lot of people's hearts.
Mm-hmm. Jessica is someone who fought from inside and won a case against Missouri Department of Corrections, and today opens a legislative session. Are there any priorities on that front when it comes to the law for MTUG, let's say over the next year?
This is where I get into strategy within working in the systems. My hope and desire within MTUG is to prioritize the people who are impacted. We are here in St. Louis. We're not in Jefferson City. We can do a lot to advocate, to talk about issues that are currently being proposed or possibilities. But, I also know from speaking to people within the community, there's so much anxiety that comes with even acknowledging that our rights and liberties are under attack. So, I think for me, the hope is very simple when it comes to this next legislative session. If status quo right now, unfortunately, is a win for us, I would love it if we could put forth more, proactive, beneficial policies that help, not just trans individuals, but all LGBTQ individuals in Missouri. But I think, similar to my conversation before, if, it can be hard to want something when it doesn't seem possible at times. I'm so hopeful with organizations like Promo, with MADP, that there are people fighting for us within that system too. But I think for MTUG, for myself, we really just need to hold the community during it.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that is pretty prominent on the website is that the umbrella of Metro Trans Umbrella Group also, and very intentionally, includes allies of transgender people. Can you share one of the ways that people new to MTUG can get to know your organization and participate in supportive community?
Volunteer, please. We will always happily bring volunteers into to help with the long list of things that our community and organization need. It's ever growing. But come to our community events. We have some that are specifically for direct community, but others that invite everyone. I think we're going to be having a lot more training and advocacy in the St. Louis area over this next year. That's a big part of what I think we can do here with our work to move minds forward, is to educate. And to me, the best way to educate people is to give them the direct experience and the human connection to someone who's not like them. I think there are a lot of people who love getting their performative ally badge and check mark, and I think true allyship is, to some degree, it's unspoken. It is how someone lives their life, and the amount of allies that I've met doing this work, it is heartwarming, especially having been so fearful that I would not be welcome or accepted coming out in my 30s. I grew up in the state, in this area, and it's so wonderful to feel the love and the admiration of people who aren't like me.
And this is very clearly something that it's a passion and a commitment for you, and we're really, really grateful that you've come to share that with us. Michaela Joy Kraemer is Interim Executive Director of the nonprofit organization Metro Trans Umbrella Group. Thank you for bringing light to MTUG's continuing and new work.
Thank you so much.
This episode was produced by Avery Rogers.
Audio engineering by Alex Hoyer. Podcast design by Aaron Dorr. Our executive producer is Alex.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
Our podcast proudly supports St. Louis artists by using music from Life Creative Group.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations. And leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thanks.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, saluting Earth Day on April 22nd with an ongoing commitment to help offset carbon emissions with sustainable harvesting of Missouri forests. Details at choosewood.com.